The Director General of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabweze, has been explaining some of the reasons now for the monies the government is seeking to borrow and also what they hope to spend the loans on. Mr. Akabweze was on our political program, Politics Today, where he says the nation is facing a revenue challenge and the federal government is making efforts to fix the puzzle.
Every year we do in fact, biannually, we do a debt sustainability analysis, and that process is led by the Debt Management Office. And we would not be proposing to do any borrowings if they were not, if we thought that it was not sustainable. And so, I mean, we need to move away from the sentimental discussion on this subject and speak hard facts. Right now, as you have heard us say repeatedly, and the Minister of Finance said so, on several occasions, lately, we do not believe that we have a debt problem. We do not have a debt sustainability problem yet. We have a serious revenue problem, a serious revenue challenge, which, if we do not fix, will lead us into a debt sustainability problem. And that's why the government is doing everything now, taking actions on several fronts to tackle the revenue problem. Right now, the one ratio that is of a major concern to everyone looking at our debt is the debt service to revenue ratio. But if you fix the revenues, the denominator, the debt service to revenue ratio will cease to be a problem. We are working keenly to fix the revenue problems, and we just ask that everyone support us. People express concern about the debt sustainability. We say we need to fix the revenues to address this. We've got developmental challenges that make it imperative to borrow at this time. You want to raise VAT, people are complaining. You do this, people are... There's no other way to generate this revenue.
Well, you just heard from the DG Budget Office. Let's hear the views of an economist and the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf. He joins us from Abuja studios. We'd like to thank you for joining us at this time, via Skype rather, and ask your thoughts, especially on the reintroduction of the 2016 to 2018 external borrowing plan by the President. First, do we need to borrow?
Yeah, thank you very much. Clearly, we have a major challenge with financing infrastructure. The government doesn't have the revenue, just as the DG budget said, and we all are aware about what the structure of our budget has been over the last few years. We've consistently had a situation where we have almost 80 to 20% ratio between the current and capital budget. So clearly, the revenue available to government cannot fix infrastructure. So we have very little choice in terms of financing infrastructure. Private sector financing is an option, but again, the risk environment is such that it may not be too attractive for private sector investors to invest in infrastructure. So the option you have is to borrow. But I believe that we have a major debt sustainability challenge. I don't quite agree with the position of the Budget Office, because if you have a revenue problem, then you have a debt problem invariably. So they are tied together. So we need to look at all the options. We need to look at the way we structure our budget. We need to look at the structure of the economy itself. I believe that some of our revenue performance could be better. I believe that some of the expenses that we incur needs to be looked at more critically by ensuring that you have the right kind of reforms. One key area of reform that we need to look at is the oil and gas sector reform. Because as an oil-producing country, the amount we are spending to import petroleum products is humongous. So it's affecting the local capacity to finance infrastructure. It's also affecting our balances in terms of balance of payment. It's affecting the level of our reserves. It's also posing even a challenge to monetary authorities, having to struggle to stabilize the exchange rate and struggle to also keep the reserves at levels that are sustainable. So we need to have a holistic view of the economy, undertake the necessary structural reforms, ensure that we have the right kind of policies that will make us rely less on borrowing. Because if you are spending an amount that is even more than what you budget for capital expenditure to service debt, then it's something to worry about.
What are your thoughts on the arguments that our GDP to debt ratio is one of the lowest in Africa, and perhaps those that have criticized that, wondering what specifically we're actually borrowing for, if there can be more accountability and transparency? Because when we look at some of the borrowings that the government has made in the last couple of years, they've had nothing to show for it. What do you make of those criticisms?
Well, first, the issue of the debt to GDP ratio, that kind of analysis may not fit into our context. Because if you look at the major components of our GDP, they are not revenue generating as such. Agric contributes about 22% to our GDP. What is agricultural contribution to revenue? There is no relationship. If you look at our revenue profile, contribution of agri sector to revenue is almost nil. The distributive trade sector accounts for about 15 or 17% of our GDP. What is the contribution of that sector to revenue? So between those two sectors, we are already looking at something close to 50% of GDP. That is not contributing significantly to revenue. You see, such model or such analysis can only apply to countries where there is a strong relationship between GDP performance and revenue performance. It doesn't fit here into our own context. So I think what we should worry about is what the DG budget said. We should be worrying about the capacity to service the debt. That means you'll be looking more at debt service to revenue, which is very high. We also need to look at all of this within the context of even the budget. We already have a 2020 budget. We have a 2020 to 2022 medium-term expenditure framework. Where does the new proposal, where does it fit in? We need clarification in all of this so that we are able to put everything in perspective so that we exactly understand what the government is putting on the table. Does this fit into the 2020 budget? Does it fit into the medium-term expenditure framework? These things are important, to really understand, to have a clear picture of what the government intends to do.
So only in 2018, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, said that the current state of Nigeria's debt profile is worrying and poured out international concerns over the growing debt level in Africa. And she also talked about how it took the former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, years to negotiate with the Paris Club. With all of this, I mean, how do you expect, or how do you think the government, and that's Nigeria's federal government, moving forward, can help the economy and also reduce our rising debt? Briefly.
Well, the issue of managing the debt situation is both a revenue issue and a cost issue. First, we need to look at the cost of governance. We need to look at the structure of our spending so that we spend in a way that reduces the pressure of recurrent personnel and overhead on the government. So we need to look at that. There's a whole need, to reform the spending structure of government. I should be looking at also what the revenue generating agencies of government are doing. The president has said it repeatedly that the revenue generating agencies need to do a lot more than what they are doing currently. If you look at the past two budgets, for instance, the biggest shortfall in terms of revenue projection is coming from independent revenue. And the key components of independent revenue are all this revenue that are expected from the revenue generating agencies. So we need to get them to do much more than what they are doing currently. Then we need to also look at the of our, expenditure revenue and ensure that even what we borrow strictly purpose of infrastructure development.
Okay.
Because over time, since it's where whatever is just thrown into the budget, and before you know it, it gets consumed by recurrent expenditure.
All right, we would like to appreciate your time. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Muda Yusuf, DG Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for talking to us at this time.